I'd like to talk about talking in this video, but before we get into that, I'd like to introduce myself. This is Sala's Heart and Soul Cafe. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. And if you're here for the first time, you're very, very welcome. So talking. When I'm delivering, I have shared before that I deliver mental health first aid training. And in most of the courses that I deliver, I actually do find that it's 70-80% women and 30 to 20% male attendance on those courses. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing that, more and more women are coming forward and, wanting to talk about and train up in mental health first aid. That's a good thing. But it's not such a good thing that only 20 to 30% men are coming forward wanting to talk about and learn about mental health training and receive that, certification as a mental health first aider. And the reason why I say this is lots of men do say, when we talk about the importance of talking and offloading and sharing, I get this kind of response from men quite a lot of the time saying, well, what's the point in talking and sharing, saying, things? What good is that going to do me? That's not going to make my problems go away. That's not going to change my circumstances. It's not going to change anything. I'm going to have all those problems that I have, that I've talked about. After I finish talking about them, I'm still going to have them. In fact, probably, going to, waste time talking, and that's going to have a negative effect on my day. And that's how they see it. And that's how generally people see it. But I sort of tend to see that more in men and that kind of response from men. So then let's talk about why it's important to talk. Now, have you ever heard the phrase, a problem shared is a problem halved? Yeah. Something like that. So by sharing, we sort of reduce our problems, is what that saying is saying. But it's not always that. If it is that you've halved your problem by sharing it, good. That's a good thing, because maybe someone else who was listening has taken some of that burden off you. And if you hadn't have shared it, then they might not have offered to do that. So that might be a good thing. But even if it's not that it halves your problem, it still has a positive effect. Now, I'm going to explain what that is. Because when you talk about something that's going on in your head, and you bring that to the forefront, you bring that to your lips, and you say things out loud, and you can hear, your own ears can hear you saying the things that you're saying, and the person that's listening to you may paraphrase and say things back to you. You're actually airing those points, okay? Those things that you are thinking that you're struggling with, or not thinking, but you are struggling with, okay? But by doing that, by saying things out in the open, you are not only hearing them back, you are maybe hearing the person that's listening to you say them back to you, paraphrasing perhaps. And it's a way of putting things into perspective as well. Because when you hear things, you might actually then come to realize that maybe this isn't such a problem after all. Maybe it's not quite as a difficult problem after all. Maybe it's, you might be able to put things into perspective a little bit. You might be able to compartmentalize things, and it might be something that you weren't doing in your own head, but by saying it out loud, you are able to do that. And that in itself has a positive effect. And it's not really a matter of you realizing, oh, lots of people have it worse off than you, and that's not going to help. It's not really about that. It's just putting things into perspective, not necessarily comparing your problems to someone else's problems, or so that other person who's listening starts saying, oh, but so-and-so in the other department had this problem, and well, he's a lot worse off than you. You don't really need that. We're not comparing one problem to another problem, or one person's struggle to another person's struggle, because each struggle and to each person is a unique thing to that person. It's not something that we need to compare. Okay, and I've talked about that and the reasons why in other videos as well. We'll talk about stress container and that kind of thing. You could have a look at that. So I think that talking is important. It's how you decide to talk. It could be a friend. It could be a family member. It could be that you go and find a therapist. It might be talking therapy. You might call the Samaritans and talk to them, there's a helpline. And there's other helplines as well, Cruise. There's lots of other helplines in the UK that, we can go looking for, and we can find people to talk to. But it's the importance of it. It's knowing the importance of talking. Are you talking? Is really what's important, because it's a matter of releasing, isn't it? It's offloading. And a lot of my clients do say to me, because I counsel women who have experienced child loss, that they do say, well, I've got no one to talk to. Why are they saying that? Most people do have people around them that they can talk to, but what they mean is that they haven't really got anyone around them that they can relate to, or they can relate to them. That's really what we're saying. That's why it's quite important, and I have sort of talked about this before, made a video about this before. Finding your people is really, really important. The stages of your life that you go through, and I've talked about that in previous videos, that let's say when you first get married, and you might have friends who are not married, and you can't relate to them quite the same way now because you are married. Yeah, I don't know if some of you might have experienced that, but I certainly did. And you might drift apart, not fall out with, but drift apart from some of those friends, and you might find new friends who are married, friends who have just recently got married. And then when you go on to having children, there might be a distance between those friends who have not had children yet, and you might make new friends who have had children. So it's that relating. That's really what we're talking about. Having in common with, relating with, so that you have things to talk about. Yeah, and I'm not saying that you lose all your friends. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that you do need to have people around you that you can relate to, and they can relate to you. That's important. I found that when I lost my son just over 4 years ago, that there were some people that were family friends that I haven't seen since then. I haven't seen for over 4 years. Yeah. For whatever reason. I'm not condemning them in any way, or saying, you let me down. No, they must have their own reasons for not being able to keep in touch and keep our friendship going after the loss, of our son. They have whatever reason they have, and okay, that's fine. I'm not going to hold that against them. But I do feel that it was important then for me to reach out and find people that I could relate to. Because I've heard it so many times. I've said it so many times. There's only so many times you can share your story with the same person who's already heard it. Okay, when you're talking to people that really care about you, they can probably hear it again and again and again. When you're having those waves of grief and you're feeling really low and you need to sort of offload and talk. But having said that, even if that's received well by people around you who do care about you, you still might yourself, I still sometimes feel that, oh, well, I don't want to burden that person with, my story, because my story is my story for life. because I'm in it, and that story hasn't ended yet. But I know for one thing, however it ends, it's not going to be me who's got over losing my son. I know that part of the story. So for me to repeat my story to somebody again and again and again is almost me feeling that I'm a burden on them, making their life sort of heavy and difficult, and I don't want to do that. So finding people that I can relate to is important, and that's the reasons why I do what I do. By joining, coming forward and volunteering at a bereavement charity, which means that we all come together, all of the befrienders who counsel and support women, every so often, once a month, we all come together, whether it's face to face or whether it's on Zoom, and we share. And because I think most of us have volunteered and come to this charity and volunteered because of our own losses, because we've gone through something. Some of us have lost, a parent, some of us have lost a sibling, some of us have lost a child, and most of us have had some kind of experience. As a result of that experience, we've come and wanted to find like-minded people that we can relate to, also give something back to society, or do something positive in the person's name that we've lost. So it's part of those, could be a combination of those reasons or just one of those reasons. So coming back to the importance of talking, it is really, really important to talk, because if we don't, we hold things down, we dampen things down, and it erupts. I've seen it erupting in people that don't share, don't cry, don't show those natural emotions, don't let them come up for whatever reason, whether they're, it's because they're a male who, it's, they've been brought up with that thing about, don't show emotions, you don't cry, man up and be a man. And, and men don't cry. Men don't show their emotions. They don't show that they're vulnerable in any way. They need to be the macho man all the time. And as a result of that, then they pay the price, because we then have a society where we are, losing 2/3 of all deaths by suicide are men. So it's there in the stats. We can see it. Okay, it's not that we're pretending or we're making this up. It's fact. We are losing more men to suicide than women, and we are, and we are still seeing the graph going up when it comes to poor mental health. Even though we're talking about it more. And I would like to say this: in organisations in the UK, it's mandatory to have physical first aiders, but it's not mandatory to have mental health first aiders. It's mandatory to think about duty of care, and duty of care covers physical and mental health, well-being. So the best way really to do that is for all organisations to have mental health first aiders also in the workplace, so that they're trained to spot the signs of poor mental health before it gets to a crisis point. And that's what I think is probably quite important, to do that. That way we don't sort of just sit on it until something gets into a crisis and then we deal with it. We can deal with things, as we go on, because we're trained in that field to do that. Anyway, so the importance of talking, it's very important. Hopefully by thinking about it, we realize that it is important to talk, and it is important to encourage other people to talk. So it's important to listen. And I've made a video about that. If you haven't already seen that, please do. It's called Are You Listening? So yeah. So thank you to you for listening to this video and allowing me to talk about talking. Please do share, subscribe, comment, And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, look after your hearts and souls.